just feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. It's Dom and Chris here, and we're recording down here in Engle Studio for all of your recording needs here in Tucson. And before we begin, as always, come and check out our social media pages. They should be listed below in all those graphics. And give us a like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube and all our social media platforms. And Chris, what do we got today?
Oh, man, we're talking about a basketball legend who nobody likes.
Nobody likes
Which
him.
is such a weird take, especially from this era, who we have people, like, even if you didn't like him, you almost respect him.
Right, and it's like he's great, and everyone respects his game. It's like that scene in The Simpsons in Band. Lisa likes Millhouse. Nobody likes Millhouse. Today we're talking about basketball's Millhouse. His mom says he's cool. Isiah Thomas.
Mom loves him more than anything. Isiah Thomas, one of the best point guards in his era.
Can't deny it.
But, God, we'll get into how many people he rubbed the wrong way. It is crazy. When you go through it and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that now.
Chris, he is one of the most talented point guards, not only of his era, but NBA basketball history. But I think it takes even more talent to be that disliked. To be that disliked by swaths of people, not just specific groups, everybody.
Literally, it takes more talent to stick with him for 4 or 5 years on a team, because that's what it seemed like. Was guys were like, I can't play with him anymore.
I do not like you.
Yes,
and one of the guys we did an episode on too. We'll get into that.
I love that, where he was just like, nah, I hate him. Just like, damn.
Alririghty, Isiah Lord Thomas III. What was Jesus taken as a middle name? It's little Lord Fauntleroy, born April 30th, 1961, on the west side of Chicago. A very horrible place to grow up.
Segregated, very poor, rough upbringing. His dad was just one of those awesome dudes. That was super violent in the house. And I think it was when Isiah was like 5 or 6, his mom ended up leaving his dad and became a single mom. And I think Isiah had 6 brothers and sisters.
He was the youngest of 9 kids.
9 kids.
Which is insane. And his dad was actually...
check my math on that.
A supervisor at a warehouse plant. But when the plant closed, he had a good steady job enough to support the family after they had moved up from Mississippi to Chicago. But then once he lost his job, the only job he could get was as a janitor. And he took out his anger and frustration not only on his wife, but the rest of his family. And his mom decided one day after one of his older sisters graduated high school, I'm out. I'm just out.
And decided to become a single mother household and raise these kids on her own. And it was interesting.
Which is terrible because she's only supporting them on one income.
Yep.
And it's very tragic for Isiah and his older brothers and sisters who aren't out of the house to have to grow up in even worse poverty in an even worse area.
And his brother said it was very sad to come home from school that day, see their dad's stuff all packed up, and he was leaving. But also they were like, oh, good, because it was so ridiculously violent, which that's the kind of thing that's so sad about those relationships where you're just I love that guy, but man, is he a piece of shit.
Yeah, we appreciate the janitor paycheck, but please don't beat our mother.
Yeah, it's
just
crazy.
Don't do it.
It's crazy.
Just don't do it.
I love the fact that he was Isiah. We're talking about now was almost destined to be on the basketball court. Even when he was a kid,
he started young too, age 3.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Did you see that story about when he was the water boy for his brother's team? And what I love about these younger brothers is they always say, my older brother, his older brother Larry, he was just he was the best basketball. He was way better than me. Yeah. And you're oh, the streets got him, or what,
And that's what happened to his older brothers. They'd be do as we say, not as we do, because crime, drugs, everything at that time. It's like that bad Leroy Brown song, only for realsies, everyone. It's terrible.
Didn't realize that was a documentary.
I didn't realize. Thank you,
What's
Jim Croce.
A
suckumentary?
A suckumentary? Yeah, so.
But he would go to his brother's games and perform at halftime.
Yep.
And do all these crazy dribbling skills competitions and shooting, and like you knew he was going to be great. And to his brother's credit, despite the lifestyles that some of them were leading, they wanted to protect him. They put almost a shell around him as far as like, go follow your dreams, kid. Get the hell out of here.
And they almost became like his managers, which we'll get into in his high school. But this is the thing that I feel like benefits younger brothers or younger siblings so much is they get to play against their older brothers or sisters and just get dominated. Cheryl Miller. And just get dominated, and it really makes you a better player playing with better players. Like that is just like the old adages that you'll just see throughout all of these sports is you're just like, oh, the younger brother played with his 3 older brothers and they critiqued his game.
Look at the Watt family right now.
Exactly. And they critiqued his game since he was like 3. You know, it's crazy to think that his brothers really shaped his everything.
So after he's dominating as a youth player and going to Our Lady of Sorrows school, those Catholics always so upbeat, Chris.
Is this the school that was like he had to leave at 4 a.m?
Yeah. So his brothers, to their credit, almost like his manager.
That's what
they went around Chicago in the suburban areas of Chicago, outside of Chicago, and were basically shopping his skills
and scouting
as point guard.
Yes,
they were like schools.
They were like because there were a couple of powerhouse teams, and they were like, "Who needs a point guard?" Which is crazy in that era, but they really did that.
They were ahead of their game, man.
And he ends up taking 4 buses all the way to the end of the line.
St. Joseph's School in Westchester, which is
1 train.
Yeah, 1 train. It's like
crazy.
You have to wake up at 4 a.m, and we're talking about winter. Not in Los Angeles, not in San Diego. We're talking about winter in Chicago.
Yep.
That is like some Siberia gulag shit, okay?
And he said it was a little racist.
A little bit.
You know?
In Chicago, Chris, I would have never guessed.
One of the only black guys to go, if not the only one.
And he's a student athlete there as well. But he comes there to St. Joseph's, and by his junior season, he leads them to the state finals.
Yep.
He's emerging as one of the best, not only players in Chicago, not only the best in Illinois, but in the entire country as a 6'1" point guard. And by his senior season, he's one of the top prospects in the country and basically can go anywhere that he wants to go to school.
Now, he meets up with somebody.
He does meet up with somebody.
In these streets of Chicago.
Yes, he does.
And this guy comes back with our sports spiderwebs.
Spiderwebs.
It's interesting because I heard them talking about it. It's to think of what basketball was in that time is you would hear about other players.
Yeah.
And you'd hear about other players in like your age group where you're just like, oh, you got to go to this playground.
And play against this guy.
And then play against this
guy.
And
then when you beat him, you level up to the next boss.
And I was just going to say, it was literally, that's why I loved it, because that's why I felt like it was literally like, oh, no. The Chicago video game was this. And then he meets up with, give it to me.
Mark Aguirre, right?
Mark Aguirre.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite Isiah story after he meets up with Mark Aguirre because they play summer leagues together.
Yeah.
And he goes, Mark showed up and scored 50 points in the first quarter.
Quarter?
And then picked up his stuff and left.
Did he take his shorts with him like Will Chamberlain?
Damn right. Isiah said he just picked up his stuff and left. He was like, I'm done. Because they were that kind of assholes, if that makes sense. Because they were the 2 best prospects. Mark was a year ahead of him, and Mark goes to DePaul.
Yeah.
And
Isiah wanted to go there.
And takes DePaul to the Final Four, and they actually had an agreement to come and play together.
Yeah.
Because they knew how good they were. Do you want to get right? What was his senior year like? So that's...
No, you can go into it.
And then, he was looked at as one of the top prospects.
Yeah.
But it was known that it was literally DePaul or Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana was his other choice. Coached by Bob Knight. Who had perfect season not too long before in the national championship. Lots of rage, lots of chair throwing.
And this is...
I love this story.
Well, this is where I feel like it is literally like the white basketball team.
This is Duke before Duke, and Krzyzewski used to be a Knight assistant.
Yes.
And
DePaul is a Chicago. This is what Mark wanted. He said we should stay here in Chicago and make Chicago the big, which I liked a lot. But Bobby Knight shows up, all bravado, throwing chairs,
Throwing chairs, cursing.
He gets in an argument with I don't know which older brother, but
it was multiple older brothers.
Because they wanted him to go to DePaul, and they thought he wasn't going to be used for whatever. I thought Isiah's comments on it, because he was about picking what college it was, he just goes, you see guys nowadays, they'll have their little press conferences and they're like, I'm choosing to go to Florida State. And you're like, all right.
Good for you. I pick a hat.
What he said, he just goes, my mom said Isiah's going to Indiana. That's literally what happened. He called Mark up. He said, hey, man, I'm not coming to DePaul because I need to change and I need to get out of Chicago because something bad's probably going to happen if I stay, because they still were living in poverty, and it was probably one of the best.
His mom
moves.
probably just wanted him to experience something new and just get the hell out of there. Because if you're going to end up getting out, don't stay there for 4 extra years, despite your best friend going to the school you really want to go to.
Yes.
So he chooses Indiana in Bloomington with Bob Knight, and they already get off to a rocky start in the '79 Pan Am Games.
Well, he ends up coaching with them, and he really, I feel like Bobby Knight, because he said he would never or not criticize his game, but he would always criticize his attitude or what he would do almost off the court.
Yeah.
Because he wanted him to be that point guard general, and he was almost that selfish point guard at that time.
Yeah, share it. Don't, just go for 80.
Yeah.
But he kicks him out of practice twice during these summer Pan Am Games in 1979. And he's like, you'll never play for Indiana if you play like that. But Isiah doesn't let it faze him that much, as far as he probably wanted to go back to DePaul. He said he wanted to go back to Chicago, but he stays, which ends up actually being kind of good for him.
I thought was really good. And if it was nowadays, he'd be in that transfer portal
easily.
So fast.
Yeah.
Which is, and Bob Knight, to his credit, lets him become the point guard that we kind of see. So I don't know.
Mesh of styles, pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have become as great of a point guard later on if he didn't have these 2 years in Indiana.
Yeah, because his first year, he's first team freshman All Big Ten, 79-80, 15 points, 6 assists. They make the Sweet 16. And then the following season in 80-81, they're completely dominant. He's arguably the best player in the country.
He gives him Bob Knight gives him the captain.
Yeah.
And like you said, they really take over, and this is where you see him become this point guard that, he lives up to the hype.
And he's 20 years old, 20 years old, and just absolutely incredible. They end up winning the national title that season. He's the Final Four MVP, and people are thinking, oh man, another season of him in Indiana, but that's not the case. Because he has even talked about this, why he decided to leave school after his sophomore year. 3 months before the national championship game, he went home back to Chicago after a tournament in Hawaii and just he walked in the front door and it looked like a bomb had gone off. The poverty and squalor that his family was living in. He's like, I need to get me some of that cash money right now.
Well, and that year he said one of his childhood friends died.
Yeah.
His mom had a heart attack. And then when he went home, he said they didn't even have, because the heat wasn't on, so he was just it was like icicles in there, and it was so bad. And you could see, and that's why I kind of like that colleges are starting to pay these student athletes. Because he was just there's no way I can go back and play for free.
And because he was playing for free. Mm-hmm. For the amount of money that he was raking in for the program in the university, he was playing for free and absolutely dominating. But he goes out in the 1981 NBA draft, and there's two players at the top of everybody's draft boards. Isiah and who else, Chris?
Mark Aguirre. And that was the thing that, actually, I think it was mom or maybe his brother was saying. They were like, Chicago was so proud that draft.
Yeah, it had to be.
Two guys from the west side, and they came up together. It was just all of that where you're just that is so awesome. It really made, I bet, basketball even more vibrant in Chicago.
Oh, yeah. It's take that, New York.
Yeah.
Take that, Boston. Take that everywhere.
And we know the Bulls were number 1 in 81.
Yes, they were. So in 1981, the Mavericks have the first pick in that draft, and they take Aguirre. And then the Detroit Pistons, a very craptacular franchise at this juncture of their history, are picking number 2, and they decide to take Isiah to be their messiah.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he was taken to be. And he turns the team pretty much quickly right around, if you really think about it.
Well, he brings this floor general, because that's really what I feel like his best attribute is he really leads a team as the point guard, and you see it with him, like you're saying, right away.
Not all the pieces are there in place, but his presence just being there makes them a better overall squad until you can find the specific pieces.
Well, and then you just start building. That's the thing that I think he
GM
really
Jack McCloskey, that's exactly what he did. He's like, this is our cornerstone. Now let's build around it.
Now let's build it. Yep.
So in 81-82, he wins the Rookie of the Year, 17 points a game, almost 8 assists, and over 2 steals. And while the Pistons have a losing record, they're not at the top of the I mean, there's no lottery, but I mean, they're not the shittiest team in the NBA anymore.
No.
The following season, he leads the NBA in minutes, has a career high, almost 23 points a game, almost 8 assists, and they get a new coach this year, Chris, and a very important coach in Chuck Daly.
This is where I feel like is the first big piece, because he, like chair thrower Bobby Knight, he knows how to get the best out of Isiah, and this is really where you see the Pistons of the 89, 91. This is the two, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you see the cornerstone of the point guard and the coach.
Yeah, the coach has a system in place where he's like, let's run and get it a little bit with our athletic point guard.
Yep.
But let's get some toughness too with some players that I've known before. 83-84, they make the playoffs this year. Isiah has a great season. Mind you, during all of these first 12 seasons we're going to discuss, Isiah makes the All-Star team.
Every year.
Making the All-Star team in the NBA in the 80s actually meant something.
And making the All-Star team especially later on, the East was just so stacked.
Yeah.
He was just always that front runner of point guard.
Because in the West you have the Lakers as the team, and then the occasional Blazers or Rockets run kind of peppered in there. In the East, it's just Titans fighting each other, and the Pistons are trying to get into that mix with Isiah. 21 points a game, 11.1 assists, and in their playoff series, this is the first time people outside Detroit, kind of Indiana, see how good he is. Well, they lose in the first round in 5 games to the Knicks. In the final game 5, he has something I think 16 points in the fourth quarter to send the game to overtime. And while they end up losing to Bernard King and the Knicks, you're like, wow, they could be really good. This team could be really good because they're starting to add pieces to their front court, like Bill Laimbeer and then later Rick Mahorn, and they start developing a bit of an identity.
That's right. And that was the thing I feel like with these late runs is they're they're a tough team, and they almost lean into that.
Yeah.
Where you see that winning mentality that they'll take you to the wire, and we come back next year with almost a Pistons team that we could recognize.
Yeah. 21, just over 21 points a game. He led the league in assists with almost 14, 4.5 rebounds from your point guard. I don't care who you are. He was, say what you will about him, the person. He was tough as shit on the basketball
court. And he wasn't very tall.
No,
we're not talking about magic. We're talking more of a regular size point guard, but he was there and he understood.
I wanted to bring this
rebounds.
Up. I read online that one of his nicknames was Pocket Magic, which I found so funny. But then I thought, Pocket Magic, that just sounds like another name for a lady's marital aid. That's all I'm throwing out there, sports experience people.
Isiah, listen to me. We have a sponsorship deal. Just hear us out.
Hear us out. I've got a plan. I've gone to the bank. They're ready to go. Say yes.
We need you to sign on. That's
Needs
all
to be
we're
blue
waiting
and red,
for.
number 11, everybody. Now, so 84-85, they sweep the Nets in the first round. I believe Daryl Chocolate Thunder Dawkins was on that team.
Yeah.
And then they go into the Eastern Conference semis to face the Boston Celtics.
And this is the Celtics that everyone recognizes, the
Celtics everyone
ugliest,
loves or hates.
The ugliest team, recorded history.
Yes, they are. They lose in 6. Isiah has an amazing series, though.
Yes.
Almost 26 points a game and over 10 assists. The following season, they end up having a first-round playoff exit to the Hawks and Dominic Wilkins, but that still doesn't stop him from averaging almost 27 and 12 in the playoffs. I mean, Pat Riley's even discussed this. He was like, there's a 4 or 5 year run in the 80s there where that's some of the best point guard play we've ever seen. Because he had every skill you wanted out of a point guard. Like, everything.
Just everything. And like I said, probably his best attribute isn't on the score sheet. Which we see coming in this next year because they kind of had this rivalry brewing with the Celtics. They like didn't shake their hands, and they were like, obviously this was like the cusp of the bad boys. Mm-hmm. So like they were starting to really foul, and like I think 88 is when Rodman shows up.
Yeah, 86, 87 because they've acquired Mahorn. And then they have a young John Sally, a young Rodman.
A young John Sally, which is even weird to think of.
I know. He still looks very young. He looks great for his age.
Oh, yeah. But still, I always think of him
and Joe Dumars on this squad. So, and they have another guy. They acquired from the Utah Jazz, from Utah, where they don't allow music.
That's true. One Adrian Dantley.
Former NBA scoring champion whose style of play we discussed in our episode. Go listen to episode 99. Adrian Dantley, great player. I think he's in the Hall of Fame now. His style and Isiah's style don't clash on the basketball court, and they don't clash, or they do mesh.
Clash, yes.
Yeah, they do clash, but they don't mesh off the court or on the court.
And, well, I feel like this was probably the only bad acquisition from this team was Adrian Dantley's style. They were trying to run and gun, play more rough and tumble,
share
and he
the
was
ball,
more
get open shots. He was and at 6'5", and we talked about it in the episode. He could post up with the best of them during his era. He was tough as nails, which you wanted on that team, and he could score whenever he got the ball. The problem was, if you passed it to him, you're probably not going to see it until the next possession.
And Isiah didn't like that, and they really hated each other. So there was kind of like this, I bet, ridiculous tension in the locker room because a lot of people hated Isiah in this time.
And Adrian Dantley is a frosty motherfucker, too.
I think when Mahorn first showed up, he told him, he just goes, hey, you're fat. That's literally what Isiah's like first things were talking to him. He was just like, he's such a dick. It's so funny.
Did I ever tell you before I lost my weight, one of the reasons why was my sister's, my 3-year-old nephew came up to me just one day out of the blue, pointed at me when I weighed like 250 pounds. He was like, you're fat. And then he walked away. I'm like, why? You dick. Isiah's like he has the filter of a 3-year-old with his teammates.
Yes, 100%.
So in 86, 87, they're a Leviathan now. They're ready to finally take on the big bad Celtics. Isiah has another great season, over 20 points and 10 assists per game, almost 4 rebounds. First round, they sweep the Bullets. Then they take out Dominic Wilkins and the Hawks in 5. And then we get into a very rough and tumble Eastern Conference Finals. There was a game where Adrian Dantley was knocked out with a concussion.
Yep.
And then in Game 5 at the Boston Garden with the series tied 2-2, we're late in the game, and Isiah makes a great defensive play. The Pistons have the ball with almost no time left, and Isiah is inbounding
I'll tell you what, it was a game-winning play until he gave it away.
It was a game-winning play until the next play, which was a game-winning play opposite.
For Larry Bird.
Larry Bird. Sonny.
Yeah, that's a compliment. Thank you. He's like one of the best basketball players of all time.
You can't just do that, Mac. So Isiah's inbounding the ball, and he talked about it. He's like, this was the first time in my career where I ever felt like I lost a game in the playoffs.
I even wrote it down on my notes. It was like the mistake in his career. You don't see it happen any other time. He literally I don't know what happens. He just said he got nervous.
He got nervous when he saw the ref counting because you have to inbound it within 5 seconds, and then
Chuck's
trying to be like, God damn it, we have some left.
Chuck's trying to call a timeout, and he gets nervous. He sees the refs counting down, and he just throws it in.
Throws it right to Larry Bird, who makes an excellent pass to Dennis Johnson to get the easy layup and put the Celtics up 3-2. Granted, you're going back to Detroit, but you got to win 2 instead of 1.
Yep.
And while they win Game 6, they end up falling in Game 7, which had to be just devastating.
Yes.
Especially
with these Celtics, who, like we said, they had this rivalry. It was one of the toughest series where you start to see them become the bad boys.
Yes,
and
because they're fighting back, because the Celtics were no slouches in their own right.
No, they were the originators of it, I feel like.
Yeah, them and the Lakers. But Isiah this is where we start getting into the dick Isiah, because after this series, he has some comments about Larry Bird.
Well, technically,
Dennis Rodman has some comments, but Isiah says, you know what?
He piggybacks.
I agree.
Yeah, well, so Dennis Rodman comes out and he says, if Larry Bird was black, he'd just be another player.
Which is ridiculously
awesome statement to make. After you lose to him,
yes,
you're just like, come on, like. But it's funny, and I feel like this is our first glimpse into Rodman,
because he was beloved. But it's our first glimpse into Rodman being crazy.
That's what I mean.
But it's also our first glimpse into Isiah being, because he was, that cherubic assassin that everyone wanted to like.
I heard I heard Isaiah's quote. So they let you hear it in exactly what he's saying, and he's like laughing saying it. Like, yeah, if he was black, he would just be another good guy like us. Like, he was like literally, but it was like he never should have said that, especially after the comments, especially in that era.
I mean, he should have been, Dennis, just stop.
Yes.
Just stop. Everyone get out of here. I'm going to talk to him. As a leader would do. But he doesn't do that. He laughs right along and just keeps joking. He has to make some apologies with Larry Bird at that year's NBA Finals. And, oh boy, Isiah, if that was just the first and only, I think we'd laugh about it
I think we would laugh.
But there's more. There's more in the following seasons. 87, 88. Now they're pretty much hell-bent on kicking the shit out of Boston. And Isiah.
And Boston's old, and they're Jordan's not Jordan yet. Like, everything is kind of set up for the Pistons this year.
They go into the playoffs. They get by the Bullets in 5. Then they beat Chicago in the next round, 4-1. And then in the Eastern Conference Finals, finally they get over the hump against those Celtics. In that series, Isiah has 23 and 8 a game as far as points and assists. And now they get to play his buddy in the finals, his other buddy, Magic Johnson, and the Lakers.
Old Magic. They originally were friends.
Yeah.
Possibly lovers.
Possibly hate each other down the road, which we'll discuss.
We'll let you figure that.
We'll figure it out.
And they meet, and
it's a back and forth series because the Lakers this is Showtime Lakers.
Worthy,
Kareem, Magic, Kurt Rambis, AIDS. God damn.
Kurt Rambis is the greatest looking basketball player of all time.
AC Green not getting AIDS because he's a virgin. So
God, AC
6. The Pistons are up 3-2, and in Game 6, this is where you see and why everyone might hate him, the person, but you respect him at least as a player. Isiah injures his ankle, and in the third quarter goes off for 20-plus points.
And he's obviously injured.
He's hobbling down the court and just saying, I am refusing to lose. He had talked about before where he would go to these Lakers and Celtics finals just to go.
Yeah.
To see what it's like to win a chance. Like, he's on the cusp of that. And he's not going to be denied this season. He's not going to be denied. Unfortunately, they end up losing in that game on a very bad call on Lambeer on Kareem at the end.
It is such a powder puff call, and it's such a...
In an era of the NBA where you could literally decapitate someone and they'd be like, personal foul.
It is really a Laker call. It is so crazy, and Kareem rips a couple of free throws. They end up going home.
Game 7, and then they win in the Forum. And Isiah's left ringless for another season. despite averaging 20 and 9 in the finals.
Well, you start to think, is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Because you kind of get into these teams that get there and can't, finish it off. And we see a little...
This is a finisher car. This is a finisher team. Bow down to the Detroit Pistons. I am a golden god, Isiah Thomas.
We see a switch.
In 88-89, they do not start hot. They are not looking like the possible NBA champions. And there is a lot of, it's not because the talent's not there.
It's the tension.
It's the tension between Isiah.
All in the hips.
It's all in the, I got his head, Chubbs. So there's tension between Isiah, of course, and Adrian Dantley. And it comes to a head. And Chuck Daly at this point has had it with Dantley as well.
I think we brought this up in the Dantley episode was if they had won that championship, this would be different. But
I can guarantee you if they won in 87-88, there might have been cooled off, or Dantley probably might have been traded before the season.
It would have went down different, but man, did it come to a head where Dantley went to one of the beat reporters.
Yep.
And he goes, "You want to print something? Print this. I hate that guy." And he points to Isiah Thomas, and he just goes, "You can print that."
Oh, God.
And you could just tell that.
But he's messing with the flow of this team, this young team, and they're trying to get Rodman more minutes because he's playing great at forward.
Yep.
Like, he's starting to get angry, and by that time, Daly's had it, Isaiah's had it. Now, there are all sorts of conflicting stories on why Adrian Dantley was eventually traded. And who was he traded for, Chris?
We see this sports spider web. Mark Aguirre comes back
because
around.
He's hated in Dallas.
He really is, which is interesting because I feel like Dallas was looking at what Isiah was, and they were like, why didn't we get?
Yeah.
So he straight up trade for these two guys.
And Dantley is pissed. And he is starting to throw around accusations, which might be true, might not be true. We might have discussed it in the episode. Isiah was the one who made the trade.
Yes.
Not general manager Jack McCloskey, not Chuck Daly as a suggestion. And that's one of the biggest NBA's kind of like, did it happen or did it not happen? Did Isiah basically tell the front office, get this fucker out of here?
And you hear players on the team, they're like, that's ridiculous to think that.
Yeah.
Like you weren't in the locker room, and then you hear other accounts and you're like, oh, that really seems like Isiah had a hand in that one with the way that it all kind of went down and the way that he is.
And sending him to Dallas, which was still the dregs of the NBA, for his best friend, a guy I think whose wedding he was in as well. So like, and if I'm Dantley, I'm just like, you bastards.
Well, but see it with this next year, too.
After this trade, the Pistons start rolling. They're the number one seed in the East. Isiah has another all-star season. They sweep the Celtics. They sweep Milwaukee. And then in the Eastern Conference Finals, they just batter the shit out of Jordan and the Bulls.
And this is where they institute the Jordan rule where they
That was the next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they're still basically saying, beat us, Jordan.
Yeah.
Scottie Pippen's not good enough yet. So they go to the finals and they play the Lakers, and Kareem and Magic are hobbled after the first couple games in this series, and they're out and out beating the crap out of them. I mean, it's kind of laughable how they essentially dismantled. This was the end of the Lakers, basically, until Shaq and Kobe.
Because this is really when everybody gets super injured and AIDS.
AIDS, yes.
But you see them sweep the Lakers in 4, and you're like, oh, this is the Pistons team that we thought, like, almost that we thought last year was going to happen. Not sweep, but like...
But I mean, like for Isiah and the rest of the team, that had to feel so good because it's like that whole Ric Flair thing. You want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And after like, it's like half a decade they spent just fucking climbing the mountain.
I really thought you were going to say like that Ric Flair thing. Woo! Woo! And then just go on.
Yeah, just not even say the quote.
Just like that Ric Flair.
So Isiah, he holds the ball at the end of Game 4. His time's expiring. Gets his first title, and everything is great for the Pistons. And they're not talking one-peat. They're looking for a repeat here in 89-90. And boy, do they...
Hold on. There's a little bit of off-season controversy.
Off-season, yes. Let's get into there.
Isiah controversy. Yeah. So it pops up that it looks like he was involved with some sort of sports gambling.
Yeah.
This doesn't ever get proven, but it is likely that he was involved in some way.
Yeah.
The beat reporter or whatever for the Pistons told him, it was like, I have to write this story. Like, I can't let this.
Yeah, I can't not tell people what happened.
I think the FBI were investigating checks that he had written to somebody who was obviously like a
and they were personal checks. Yeah.
It was like obviously a bookie. It actually comes out later. There was like a book written about him and a couple other players and this was allegedly, he lost over $1 million in a high stakes dice game, which I still.
Did he lose to Ashy Larry from Chappelle's Show?
Thank you. I still think of that every single time.
Rest has been on PCP.
Got jacked. It's so crazy to think that you would lose. But hey.
$1 million. But I mean, when you think about it, though, and you think of players like Michael Jordan, these guys are like competition addicts, essentially. Like how they're
that's a good.
The fact that they're degenerate gamblers should like
not
surprise nobody.
Yes.
I mean, granted, I don't think they're the type of people that would fix games because they're competition addicts. They want to win, but betting on everything else.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah, and that's just not relegated to Isiah, Michael Jordan. This is just like. All of them.
Yeah, a normal kind of behavior that these guys, especially in the offseason, they're like, let's get some gambling
Let's
going.
cut our hair like Pete Rose and go down to the casino.
That's right.
So,
let's bet on some ponies.
89-90. Isiah has another solid year, 18.2 points a game, just under 10 assists and 3.4 rebounds. Again, from the tops in the Eastern Conference, they sweep Indiana with some Cheryl Miller energy. They beat the Knicks in 5. And then the Bulls take them to the limit in this series. This is the Jordan Rules series because now Chicago under Phil Jackson is really starting to challenge them.
Yep.
And challenge their toughness. And they get driven to a 7th game, but their coaching staff figures out the Jordan Rules, which basically makes him beat them by doing things that he's not the greatest at. And they managed to limit him. Scottie Pippen in Game 7 has a migraine problem, and they end up winning the series. And they get to go to the finals again and play the Trailblazers. Not the Jail Blazers, not the Sabone Zone Blazers, but the Clyde Drexler Blazers.
The Glide.
Series is tied 1-1 up in after Detroit, and then they go to Portland for Game 3, and Isiah just goes off in this series. Just absolutely, like he proves that he's one of the best in the NBA.
Game 3 to when they win is essentially like him being like, this is like my stamp, especially with back-to-back championships.
Yeah.
It's such a great, for him, being like, we got Adrian out of there.
Yeah.
We got my boy in, and then we just went back-to-back.
Rodman's playing more, maybe thinking about getting a tattoo or two, maybe buying a wedding dress. We don't know.
We don't know. The thoughts that we're going through is, at this point, undyed hair.
Undyed hair. Yeah, go look that shit up. It's real. But he's the finals MVP, 27.6 points a game and 7 assists. And they're on top of the world, man.
Yeah.
2 in a row. And like to think, we'll get into more dickishness, but he was one of the best players in probably the best era of basketball.
Well, my favorite quote, they were talking about them struggling, and this was probably like 86 or something, was Chuck Daly was screaming at his team, and he looked at Isiah, and he goes, "What do you do best?" And Isiah said, "Lead." And then he said, "Well, fucking lead them." Which I was like, that's so great. But then this is where I want to get into a little bit of a dream team.
Yeah, let's talk about. Do you want to do 90-91 and what happens in the Eastern Conference Finals? Let's do that one first.
I completely forgot about.
So 90-91, they're 2 in a row. They're going for that elusive three-peat. Isiah misses a lot of the year due to a wrist injury, but they're still one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. 16 points a game, almost 10 assists. They beat the Hawks in 5. They barely squeaked by them. Then they beat an completely aged Celtics team in 6. And then they draw the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals, who have finally had enough of Detroit shit. They've finally gelled as a team. Scottie Pippen is an awesome number 2. And they've had enough. And when you think about how many extra games Detroit has played in the last 5 or 6 years, they're tired. They're old. outside of really Rodman and Dumars, like
they're definitely an aging team, and this is Jordan in his prime, where we see Jordan almost kind of take over.
This is
the
a
NBA.
pissed off Michael Jordan. You don't like. There's two athletes you don't make mad: Tom Brady and Michael Jordan, because they will take your soul.
Cheryl Miller.
And Cheryl Miller, she will. She'll go for 100 in a high school game.
Damn it!
I didn't know her younger brother played basketball. But in Game 4, after Chicago has basically just beaten them mercilessly, there's still 2 or 3 seconds left on the clock before the end of the game. And Isiah, as the ringleader of the Pistons, after there's a stoppage in play and Daly's taking out all his starters because they know what's going to happen. They're going to lose the game. They don't even stay till the end of the game, Chris.
And if you watch it, it really is Isiah being like, let's get out of here, we're done. And gets up and starts to walk to the locker room, which you just don't do.
It's a punk bitch move. It is. To not shake your opponent. And you can even do the Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase, Merry Christmas. Kiss my ass. Kiss your ass. Kiss his ass. Happy Hanukkah. Just be like, congratulations, go fuck yourself. Come on, you don't even have the decency to do that? And that really casts another negative light on him as a person and NBA player.
And just not a poor loser, but almost just you could see what Adrian was saying. You could see what all these players were saying.
Yeah.
You're just he is so hard to work with. And that was kind of the end of the Pistons, or that Piston team, because like you were saying, they're kind of aging out. They get rid of Rodman.
He's traded to San Antonio for Sean Elliott, and then traded back to San Antonio.
Which is great.
I love that. Yeah, because the following season, they lose in the first round of the Knicks.
Yep.
92, 93, they don't even make the playoffs. And then by 93, 94, he's averaging less than 15 a game and under 7 assists. And on April 19th, he has an Achilles injury. And he's
it's
done.
A bad one. Yeah.
It's bad.
It's career ending. They even said that you'll never come back. It's not one of those where you're just it was you're done. So he ends up retiring. And he even said this, which I thought was kind of interesting. He goes, 2 months ago, I was like, oh, I'm coming back next year. You know what I mean? Because I think it was his 13th year, 12 of which were All-Star years.
But at this juncture for the Pistons, they're dog shit. They're completely rebuilding. And actually, the next year is when they draft Grant Hill.
Yeah.
So after Isaiah's injury, where you bring in the new era, that was the end. That was the absolute end for Isiah and the Pistons.
And the bad boy.
And the bad boys, yeah. Then you have the good boy, Grant Hill. I hate liking you, Grant Hill. I just do. Going to Duke and being a decent person.
Yeah.
But anyway, Isiah, incredible career. But let's talk about what we had discussed before, that Eastern Conference Finals against the Bulls. They're talking about a dream team after the '88 Olympics. They're looking to build the greatest collection of NBA talent ever to tell the rest of the world to go fuck themselves and their pro players in the Olympics. And you'd think Isiah would be in that conversation, don't you, Chris, about 1992?
Especially in this era, like Pat Riley said, it was some of the best point guard play. With it, just to point it out, with the 15 points, 12 assists, 5 rebound a game. That's what you're kind of expecting from him in this dream team.
That's a normal night for him.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just you can lock that in.
That's
you
what
can
I
lock
mean.
in more if you wanted to.
So going into this, everybody kind of thought he was going to do almost be a leader on this team. I can only imagine. What Jordan, Bird, and Magic said was, we would never take orders from... We hate him so much.
We're going to give this guy a gold medal. How about that awesome guy in Utah with the tighty whities and nut huggers?
I'll tell you what they
Christian
wanted.
Laettner? Sure, why not? Fuck this guy.
No, I'll tell you what they wanted was they said, we don't want some dickhead running point guard who's going to tell us what to do. We want some white guy who's just going to pass and shut the fuck up. John Stockton is his name? All right, bring him in.
Wait, you mean he's going to lead the league and break my record as Magic for assists in a career? Yeah, John Stockton, come on down.
And that's, I feel like, one of the more important things that you see with this dream team was it wasn't a competition necessarily, because it was a competition within, but it wasn't negative in that, if Isiah had gone,
It would have been. Everyone would have hated him.
I can't even imagine what it would have been like.
I think like the only guy that nobody really liked was Leitner because he wasn't a pro.
He wasn't a pro.
That's what I mean. But
and he wasn't up to the caliber that they were.
Yeah, and all the other guys were like stars, but they weren't like, there's competition, but it's not like, God, I fucking hate your guts.
Yeah.
It's just like, remember when I swept you in the playoffs? My team swept you in the playoffs last year?
It was more just like talking shit like they would do. Yeah,
that
Jordan
takes
just
talent
calling everybody
to piss off Jordan, Bird, and Magic. My God, Isiah.
And nobody. That was the other thing was Karl Malone, fantastic man.
He's a dick, but they still got
done
along
anything
with
wrong. But he hated him. Everybody hated. That was the thing about Isiah was there wasn't he like isolated himself from so many basketball circles that literally when it came time to pick teams, he didn't get picked last. He literally didn't get picked at all. That's how ridiculous it was.
Yeah, I mean, did his talent, should his talent have put him on that team? Absolutely. But man, his other talents took him right off that team.
Well, and then we see how, because later in his life, when he tries to stay in basketball, we see how...
Oh, he tries to stay in basketball, all right.
It just he does not work well with others.
Just that,
Can't share toys.
So afterwards, after his career ends, he goes to work in the front office for the Raptors.
Well, he said it was really disappointing because he thought he was going to go to work in the front office with the Pistons, and it was one of, if not the first time, that a team tried to take someone directly off the court and put him in the front office.
Yeah.
And he said they just lit both of them, himself and the Pistons, just had no idea how to make that happen. And they were just both demanding stuff that was absolutely outrageous. And it was just like, all right. So goes to the Raptors.
And then they do draft some good players while he's there. I believe he's
Damon?
an executive VP. Yeah, Damon Stoudemire. Let's take weed through Tucson International Airport.
1 whole
Tracy
pound,
Brady.
sir.
Oh, God. He left in 1998, though, because they're under new management, and he didn't know what his role was, and I'm sure he was kind of a dick.
And he wanted more control. He wanted it to be his vision of what was going to happen, and then we see him buy
the CBA.
And this is probably one of the biggest dickhead moves.
Oh, dude, it is like... Because he's on NBA on NBC for a while, and you think that's good for him. Mm-hmm. That's good. They got a good theme song on NBA on NBC.
Oh, yeah, because he is doing that for a minute.
Yeah, but he goes and buys a CBA team in 1998, or from 1998 to 2000, and you're thinking, man, he's saying all the right things.
I was going to say he's promising a lot of...
He's schmoozing a lot of people. He's promising the world to some of these owners to build a legitimate minor league, something that might even rival the NBA one day.
That's what he's saying, and then he realizes he can make $5 million a year coaching the Pacers.
Yeah, and he's using the excuse, they're bankrupt, everything else, and basically... What Trump did to the USFL is what Isiah Thomas did to the CBA.
He was like, they're bankrupt. And the CBA was like, you bankrupt us. And they were like, I know, that's how I know you're bankrupt.
Although he had some good ideas regarding streaming games and as far as fan interaction with games. It's almost very XFL-y in that way, but it was just run so poorly.
So he takes over the Pacers.
Over the Pacers after Larry Bird retires as head coach. And he's got a young team.
And I was going to say, they're not a great team, but they're a very young team, so they're building.
He takes them to the playoffs every year that he's there. Yep. They're fresh off an NBA Finals appearance against the Lakers. And, they just have some Cheryl Miller energy in the playoffs, Chris. They lose in the first round, I think, 3 in a row.
3 in a row, yeah.
And Larry Bird comes back as far as GM and says, I'm putting my buddy Rick Carlisle in charge.
To
get in fights in Detroit.
Isiah said it was very disappointing, but he could pretty much see it coming where he wasn't Larry Bird's guy. And as GM, you have to work with your coach, and he had already had this relationship with Rick Carlisle, and he was just like...
They played together, I think, in Boston, too.
Yeah, so it was almost an obvious kind of replacement.
And Larry already had a relationship with Isiah, a great one from their playing days.
Best buds.
But Isaiah's not unemployed for long, which proves that with a nice smile, you can pretty much get away with pretty much damn anything and get as many chances as you'd like.
I was going to say I thought it was going to prove how bad the Knicks run their organization, but
oh, God. So in December 2003, the Knicks hire him as president of basketball operations, and now we start getting into the Knicks that we know, because they were in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were still competitive. Yep. They were, not the best in the East, but they still had good players. Not so much anymore.
It was a really shit show of not drafting well, not getting free agents. It was like players didn't want to come to New York anymore.
It was overpaying players that were past their prime.
Everything.
It was basically you were on the second or on the bottom floor of a 2-story outhouse if you're a Knicks fan.
And then he might have sexually assaulted some people.
Yes, there was the sexual harassment lawsuit against Thomas in Madison Square Garden, which I believe resulted in an $11.5 million payout. So he's not only embarrassing the team on the court, it's off the court.
And that's kind of like his end in NBA.
Yeah, because by 2008, after he's coaching the team, they say, you know what, you put this shitty product on the floor, we're firing Larry Brown, you make it work or you're out of here. By 2008, in April, when he's fired, he has a .341 winning percentage, has tied the franchise record for losses in a season, and essentially made the franchise into a laughingstock, which was a staple of the NBA.
They literally still haven't recovered.
No.
Not even they still are a broken franchise. So,
and what's crazy, he gets a job coaching in college again at Florida International. I mean, he's gonna keep getting chances, Chris. I can't wait to see where the next one is.
I imagine he'll show up in a college, a Southern Baptist something.
He'll show up at a college, maybe hit on a few chicks. We don't know what Isaiah's gonna do, but. Well, I did want to, we've been making jokes, but I just wanted to say this guy was a 12-time All-Star, 5 times first-team All-NBA, a Rookie of the Year, 2-time NBA champion, a Finals MVP, one of the 50 and 75 greatest players in NBA history, averaged 19.2 points a game, 3.6 rebounds, and 9.3 assists. That's a hell of a career.
And I feel like back-to-back championships in one of the hardest eras to win it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't get enough credit, where it's like, oh, yeah, they beat Jordan and Bird and Magic to win these championships. Really one of the greatest players and biggest assholes.
Isaiah Thomas.